Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Christine Bishara again, doing another interview with HD Tudor. HD Tudor is a diagnosed narcissist, and he has a website, narcsite.com, as well as a YouTube channel where he talks about narcissism. HD Tudor is an aware narcissist, which makes his insight even more valuable. So I'm very excited to have him on again. Thank you, HG.
You're very welcome, Christine. Thank you for inviting me on your program.
Thank you. It's been a while, and I've had so many people ask me about narcissism, and I wanted to ask you again. I know we've done this in a previous interview, but I think it's good to do a recap of not only the types of narcissists, but also the different flavors, which I believe you call the cadres. So if you could just do a quick recap of the different types of narcissists and how they present, that would be great.
Okay. I categorize schools, then sub-schools, and then cadres. So with the schools, we have lesser, mid-range, greater, ultra. There's only one ultra, that's me. So that's easy enough. And the reason there's only one of me is that I'm the only individual that not only has this level of insight, but also has the capacity to convey this information to people. So that's the ultra, an aware narcissist that understands my kind inside out, and also empathic individuals who tend to be our victims. Now, with lesser, mid-range, and greater, lesser and mid-range are unaware. They form the greatest number of narcissists, the vast majority. Greater are aware, and they are very rare. So there's a reasonable number of them, but you won't come across them particularly often in a personal capacity. These individuals tend to be found as certain world leaders. Doesn't mean if someone's a narcissist and a world leader, they're automatically aware, but you'll find more of your aware narcissists there. In the military, in certain political spheres, titans of industry, certain entrepreneurs, certain entertainers, etc. With the lesser and mid-range, as I mentioned, they are unaware. Lessers don't operate a facade. They might have a veneer on a one-to-one basis, but they generally are easier to spot because what you see is what you get. Those are the individuals which often are grandiose in their behaviors, violent, nasty, fall out with people, have a hair trigger on their fury. Mid-range narcissists become more difficult to spot. They operate facades. So they put out, and there are different types of facades, but those are facades that they put out to the world as a whole. They have a greater level of control over their ignited fury compared to lesser. All narcissists manipulate, but there are various types of manipulation. Lessers tend to be more rudimentary, tend to be based more on heated fury, tend to be more about physical violence, sexual violence, verbal violence, destruction of property. Mid-range narcissists tend to be more about pity plays, silent treatments, utilization of cold fury. They will engage more in triangulation, both by object, person, or event. Now, within all of those schools of lesser, mid-range, and greater, there are sub-schools. So within lesser, we have lower lesser, which is your basic, and there's a lot I can say about all of these, but I'll go through them as quickly as I can. Lower lessers have a particularly low cognitive function. They have very low threshold on their ignited fury. They tend to be unemployed or have very little work. They fall out with people left, right, and center. They often utilize physical violence and verbal violence as a matter of routine. They're not sophisticated, often found in the prison system. Middle lesser are lessers that have some of the mid-ranger about them, so are more likely to perhaps use some silent treatments and pity play alongside, excuse me, the heated ignited fury. May be more likely to work, but even so, it will be haphazard familial and romantic relationships. Then you have the upper lessers, of which there are two: upper lesser A, upper lesser B. Upper lesser A is the affable arsehole. Often these individuals can be particularly intelligent, but not necessarily so. They're invariably charismatic. They don't necessarily go to violence in the same way as the lower lesser or middle lesser do, but they possibly could do. They may well be somewhat successful and have quite a reasonably extensive reach. Upper lesser A's can include the individual who's known for being a bit of a ladies' man, tries to use the more polite term, and has a lot of sexual partners, is completely transparent, is an individual where you might go, oh, goodness me, my wife's left me. He goes, great, we can go to the strippers together then. You don't expect any sympathy from him. He's completely open about the way that he behaves. He recognizes that he's just in things for himself, although he doesn't know that he's a narcissist. He is superficial, but can be fun to be around. They're often good friends in the sense of they're entertaining. They're very good at drawing people in, and often that roguish charm of, yeah, well, you know, I just want to sleep with women and drink beer and so forth, often proves attractive because certain empathic individuals want to try and calm the stallion, if you will, bring him to heel, and that proves attractive. Upper lesser type B, similarly, can be intelligent, can also be successful, usually more on a local scale, but could be internationally so. But these are your bullies. Regular use of heated, ignited fury. It's my way or the highway. I'm big, you're small. I'm strong, you're weak. I'm right, you're wrong. You're an idiot, I'm not. As mentioned, they can be successful, but they're bold, they're brash, they're belligerent, and they're bullying. And that's the identification there. So that's a quick run through of the lessers. Then with mid-range, you have lower mid-range. These individuals have an intermittent facade, like a flickering strip light. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They tend to see themselves as rough diamonds. So they think that they're good people, and they think that they do good things for good people, but they often feel that they're not really taken as seriously as they ought to do, that they're not given the credit that they should merit. They are about them, so they can be violent. Their ignited fury threshold is low, but not as low as a lesser. They usually work. They sometimes can be rather clever, but not always. They often show their hand quite readily in terms of you get these sort of flashes of fury. They're probably known for being difficult and argumentative because their facade doesn't always keep that in check. Then we have middle range, of which there are two: middle range A and middle range B. Middle range A are the overwhelming angels. These are the people who ostensibly believe they're truly kind and empathic people. They're often false empaths. They believe that they do good, but they interfere in people's lives. They're often prescriptive, telling people how they should lead their lives, that they get on the moral high horse. And they only engage in helping people because it makes them look good, but they don't realize that. They operate a facade of helpfulness, that they're going around being decent and kind to lots of people. Middle range type B are the babies, the crybabies. They turn on the waterworks. There's extensive use of pity plays and sympathy symphonies. They believe the world is against them and the universe has cursed them. Particular victim mentality with those individuals. If it's gone wrong, why does this always happen to me? It's not my fault. I can't help it, etc., etc. Then we have upper mid-range. Upper mid-range are operating with a facade of superiority. Yeah, I'm the best at this, and quite clearly I am, because invariably they have the skill set, ability, and intelligence to back that up. Often charismatic, can be brutish in certain instances behind closed doors. They are often capable individuals. It's often mistaken as well for graters because they seem to have an awareness, but they don't. Then we get to greater. Lower greater, they have an awareness of what they are. They're charismatic to a degree, but they're often the iron fist and the velvet glove, found very much in politics and the military. They're direct but effective. They're thinking several steps ahead, but you really don't mess with them. Middle greater, charismatic, often found within the entertainment industry. They like to think of themselves helping people, have a very evolved facade in that regard. They're often perhaps seen as involved in religion or alternative religion, as well as the entertainment industry. Upper greater, these are not often seen. They're not particularly bothered about prominence, but they're well known within certain circles. Often they're eminence grises. They move between the lines. They're in the corridors of power. They really are the puppet masters, but they're not particularly bothered about the recognition that they have for that. So that's a very quick run through of the various sub-schools. There's a lot more that I could say about each one. We then have the cadres, which layer onto the various sub-schools in differing degrees. For cadres, victim, these individuals want to be mothered, they want to be looked after, they invariably present with ill health and injury, they have issues perhaps where there's sexual dysfunction, they often complain a lot, they're to be found utilizing medication, so they want somebody to nurse them, they want somebody to wipe their bottom and put a roof over their head, and make their lunch and do their laundry, etc. Then you have cerebral. These are the sort of boffin types that are interested in art, film, and literature, interior design, and they will engage in sexual activity, but it's not that important to them. Theirs is all about flexing the mind as a means of, that's what interests them, and they use that arena for ensnaring people. Then we have somatic, which is the largest group in terms of cadre. These are individuals that are motivated by appearance. So it's often a case of they are handsome, beautiful, or think that they are, and may be deluded, but they're not actually. They're interested in going to the gym, wearing decent clothing, the expensive clothing, often quite gaudy. They're interested and motivated by money. They're often hypersexualized. They like to be seen out and about. They like to be photographed. They do lots of selfies, etc. And then you have the elite, which is an amalgam of both somatic and cerebral. So you have, it's not as intense as cerebral or as intense as somatic, but traits of both. So rather than be a complete individual with roid range and completely ripped and buff, they'll be more athletic, for instance, in appearance. Not all aspects of those relevant cadres always appear. So you could have a somatic narcissist that's hypersexualized, but isn't that bothered by money, but is interested in appearance. You could have a cerebral narcissist that's particularly interested in reading and plays, isn't that bothered about music, for instance. So there are aspects of the cadres which are applicable. If you want to understand more about all of those sub-schools and cadres, you can read my book, Sitting Target, or you can go to the Knowledge Vault, which you'll find in the menu bar at narcsite.com, and access the HG Malls series, which gives you more information about all of the sub-schools for lesser and mid-range narcissists. There you are.
Thank you, HG. I'll also link them in the comments when I post this. Really good summary. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about a few things. So
certainly,
in my opinion, everything you said is so detailed, and I think that's part of why people don't really think they're dealing with a narcissist. And I want to focus on the mid-rangers, especially the middle mid-rangers and the upper mid-rangers, because I think they're the hardest to spot, because like you said, the middle mid-rangers are false empaths. So they come off as good people, and it's really hard to detect whether or not they really are narcissists. But I wanted to bring up the topic of empathy, which is the cognitive empathy that a lot of them have, the middle mid-rangers and the upper mid-rangers. They don't have the emotional empathy. So in other words, they're not feeling the actual empathy, but they're very good at pretending to feel. So do you have any tips for how to tell whether or not someone is using cognitive empathy versus emotional empathy? Because I think that's where a lot of people struggle with figuring out whether this person is a narcissist or not. I think I've gotten pretty good at it just from listening to you and reading a few of your books, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how to make it easier to tell whether or not that's cognitive empathy that someone's dealing with or emotional empathy, if there is.
There's probably two main things that people can look at. The first is in terms of how the person is behaving. This is probably the harder aspect to have regard to. So you're watching the way the person is behaving and you're trying to basically discern, is this person behaving with emotional empathy, i.e. it's genuine and it's driven by feeling, or are they just manufacturing it through cognitive empathy? Now, when you're dealing with a particularly skilled narcissist, it's often nigh on impossible to make a distinction, but there are some things that you can look for. First is there may be a very small delay in the way that the individual responds. So there's almost like a pause before the narcissist's response kicks in. So what's happening there is, when I talk about this in my video, The Imitation Game, if you imagine a huge warehouse and it's got all of these shelves, and on these shelves there are packages, and one package is perhaps to do with looking surprised, one is to look for one is there that deals with providing sympathy when someone's bereaved, and then another is expressing support when somebody is feeling unwell, and another one is expressing joy at somebody's achievements, and so on and so forth. There's hundreds of these things. And when a narcissist is in a particular situation, a narcissist that has cognitive empathy, the equivalent as a cherry picker goes racing off into this warehouse, looking for the appropriate response to the situation that the narcissist finds himself in. So let us say the narcissist has been told by a friend that the friend's mother has died. So the learned response for a narcissist is, I'm sorry to hear that, possibly give them a hug, ask them how they are, express sorrow for them with a suitable facial expression, vocal tone, and appropriate words. Now, before the narcissist does that, remember the narcissist doesn't actually understand instinctively how to behave with emotional empathy in that scenario. So first of all, there may well be a delay because this cherry picker has gone off to go and find the appropriate package for bereaved friend. Sometimes that cherry picker takes a bit longer than usual to get back. So you see this almost blank response so if you're the friend and you say, oh, I've lost my mum, and you see there's almost like no reaction at first, that may well be a tell that you're dealing with someone who's about to exhibit cognitive empathy because their cherry picker has gone away to try and find the appropriate response. So there may be a delay. Sometimes it's very slight. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. What you also can look out for is that a incongruous response it then manifests. So for instance, and a rather rudimentary example would be that if you say, oh, I've lost my mum, and your friend laughs, that is the cherry pickers come back with the wrong response. Sometimes the response doesn't just quite fit. So you'd be looking, for instance, does the smile seem natural that the narcissist has given? What's going on in the eyes? Do you detect any light in there, so to speak? Is the response somewhat wooden and stiff, mechanical, that shows that it's come from cognitive empathy? As I repeat, more evolved narcissists, it's very difficult to make a distinction based upon that one interaction. Less evolved, so some middle mid-range and some lower mid-range, they give it away by virtue of either a delayed response or a not quite, the response doesn't quite fit. So that's one aspect. It's about studying the reaction that you get, and is there a delay, and does the reaction fit with what you expect? The other aspect is consistency. And this is perhaps an easier guide for people, in that if you deal with a person repeatedly and regularly, excuse me, you get to see their behaviors. And this is why I always explain to people that you can't make a determination of one interaction as to whether you're dealing with a narcissist or not. So you might deal with an individual who shows themselves to the outside world as being kind, undertaking charitable work, volunteers. But you've repeatedly witnessed them berating other volunteers, being nasty and shouting at them away from front of house, for example, picking on a particular individual repeatedly, having a go at them when there was no need to have a go at them, turning up late, maybe taking money, and so on and so forth. So you need to look at, is there a consistency of approach? That doesn't mean that you're looking for someone who's an angel the whole time, because nobody's like that. That's utterly unrealistic.
Yeah.
So even an empathic individual can do things, can sometimes be wrong, but it's sporadic and rare when that happens. What you're looking for with a narcissist that uses cognitive empathy is that there will be a certain consistency of behavior, both in terms of the presentation of a facade, but what goes on behind that. And if you give it long enough, there'll always be an instance where you'll start to see some cracks in the facade, or you see the behavior behind the facade away from the public gaze. So, for instance, if you're in an intimate relationship with a mid-range narcissist, that person's friendly to everybody else, he's the life of the party, he's kind to everybody, and then as soon as you get home, he's abusive towards you. That will tell you that when he's kind and compassionate towards you, that's cognitive empathy, because he's abusing you. Somebody who abuses you is devoid of emotional empathy. They don't switch between the two. So where somebody 1 minute, is holding your hair and rubbing your back while you're throwing up after being unwell, but then repeatedly abuses you, that instance of them holding your hair and rubbing your back was cognitive empathy, because somebody who had genuine emotional empathy would not have been abusing you. So you need to look at the consistency of the behavior.
Okay. And that's what kind of creates that trauma bond, that inconsistency back and forth, where the other individual feels like, oh, they're so nice, at sometimes, and then other times.
Well, what happens is, as a consequence of emotional thinking, which is driven by an empathic person's addiction to narcissists, invariably people get it the wrong way around. What they do is they think to themselves, this person was absolutely wonderful and amazing and kind and compassionate, and now they're being horrible to me. What's gone wrong?
Yeah.
We can get back to how it once was. Clearly, all of that was genuine, that they love me, that they treated me well, and something's gone wrong. Maybe I've done something wrong that's caused me to lose that genuine love. The point is, if somebody's abusing you, what came first wasn't genuine. So when they appeared to love you, that was just an artifice. When they appeared to be compassionate to you, that was just manufactured. When they appeared to care for you, that was fabricated. And people get it the wrong way around. They think, oh, they were genuinely decent at the beginning and something's gone wrong. No. If it's gone wrong to that extent, depth, and frequency, what came first wasn't authentic or genuine.
I also find, this is just something that I've seen, is when you set boundaries with someone who is not a narcissist, if it's a healthy boundary, they will respond with respect to what you've decided to do. However,
yes,
the narcissist, they get really angry at a boundary that you set.
Yes, because a boundary is a threat to the narcissist's sense of control.
Yeah.
So you're likely to be met with irritation, fury, complaint, whereas a non-narcissist is more likely to accept it. A non-narcissist, of course, may say, oh, go on. For instance, where you say to them, no, I'm not going to come out. They may press again, but ultimately they don't keep going, and they don't react with the same ferocity that can occur with a narcissist who's been denied.
Right. Well, this question comes up a lot to me, so I wanted to ask you, is there such a thing as a benign narcissist? And my opinion of a benign narcissist is just a really good mid-range narcissist. But I'd love to hear your opinion. Is there such a thing as a benign narcissist?
There's no such thing as a benign narcissist. That's an oxymoron. What you will have is a narcissist that engages in benign behaviors.
Right. All for their control.
Which is all about. So, for instance, you're experiencing my benign behaviors now, in that I'm answering your questions, I'm being polite, I'm being courteous, I'm not doing that because I'm intrinsically polite or courteous. I'm doing it because it serves my purposes. Namely, I control you in this interview. You don't feel controlled, so it's not a big issue. But I still have to have that control. Namely, you're not telling me that my answer's rubbish. You're not closing me down. You're not talking over me or interrupting me, etc. So I have to have control in this interview. I'm drawing fuel from your responses. I don't need it, but I'll still take it. And of course, there's the residual benefit of this is going to be it's going to be heard by an audience, which will extend my legacy. So in essence, I'm behaving myself with you because it suits my purposes to do so, not because I'm intrinsically well behaved. So you receive the benign aspects of me where I'm courteous and polite and give you interesting and fulsome answers because it suits my purposes to do so. But I can't be benign in myself because what I am is the antithesis of benign.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to another question that I wanted to ask you, which is something that you speak about a lot, love bombing, which in romantic context, you've spoken about, but I've kind of been reflecting on a lot of friendships that I've had, or even just work relationships. And I feel like I've experienced love bombing in those situations too. So my question is, love bombing, number one, when a narcissist is love bombing, whether it's a romantic partner or a work or, you know, friend relationship, what are they feeling? Is this a manipulation that they know is manipulative, or do they actually feel those things like, oh wow, I found such a great person? And the second thing I want to know about love bombing is, you know, my question, which is, it can happen in friendships and work relationships, right? It's not just romantic.
Well, I'll answer the second one first.
Yeah.
Because that's the quickest one. Yes, love bombing happens in non-romantic settings also. So, for example, between neighbours, being a helpful neighbour, popping around, seeing your elderly neighbour, looking after them, taking the rubbish out for them, cutting back the branches on the apple tree, taking around a chili con carne that you've cooked for them. So a narcissist might do all of those things as part of bringing that neighbour under control. Similarly, with a friend, it's spending time with them, mirroring their likes. Oh yeah, I'm really into Pet Shop Boys too. Great band. Let's go to a concert together. Praising the way that that person looks. Oh, I really like your fashion sense. Doing things for them. So there's lots of things that the narcissist will do by way of mirroring, monopolization of time, flattery, fake compassion, etc., which is all love bombing that non-intimate secondary source that's a friend. Ditto, it can happen with a colleague as well. So yeah, love bombing happens with non-intimate appliances as well as intimate. Now, in terms of what does the narcissist feel? Well, the narcissism has to compel the narcissist to feel a particular way and to think a particular way in order to drive the narcissist to pursue the prime aims. So the feelings and the thoughts are, if you like, are the highway to take you to the eventual destination of the prime aims. So the narcissism wants the narcissist to get control over the appliance, and most likely to draw fuel as well, and possibly to get character traits, and possibly to get residual benefits. The narcissism can't say to the narcissist, you're a narcissist, you need control, fuel, character traits, and residual benefits, because the narcissist go, what? And therefore it won't work. So instead, what it has to do is, in effect, dupe the narcissist by saying, that woman over there, she is stunning and she's beautiful. She's your soulmate, the love of your life. And basically the narcissist believes that, feels what they think is love, but it's actually narcissistic infatuation. So that they are compelled by this belief that they're in love, which for the narcissist is a manifestation of standing beneath a balcony and reciting poetry in the rain and sending 100 red roses and spending lots of time and giving you lots of sex and telling you how stunningly beautiful you are and how brilliant you are at your job and all the other things that people are familiar with. And the narcissist is motivated to do all of that as a consequence of the feeling of infatuation and the belief that this person is amazing. They look at them surrounded with this white and golden light. Oh, they're the most beautiful person in the world, the most fun person that I've come across. And so that compels the narcissist to love bomb that individual and bring them under control. And that's what the narcissist feels.
Is a self-aware narcissist also believed to believe the love bombing, or is it, you know, pretend to love
The
bomb?
narcissist, an aware narcissist favorably predisposed towards that
Mm.
individual, but knows that they are doing it in order to bring them under control. So they have the outlook of, I really like this person,
Yeah.
and now I'm going to flatter them because I want to control them.
Okay.
So there is the sensation that's there,
Yeah.
but they recognize why they're doing what they're doing.
Mhm.
Whereas the unaware narcissist doesn't recognize that.
Okay. And you say lessers don't really love bomb too much?
You will get some of it with upper lesser A, but it's almost sort of wham bam thank you ma'am approach. People talk about the whirlwind. With them, it's uh, hyper fast.
Yeah.
With upper lesser B, middle lesser, lower lesser, you get what I call the bronze period, which is you're not really treated brilliantly, but the beast is kept under control in a way. So you are treated okay to begin with. So some people go, well, I didn't get a golden period. Well, there may well have been a lesser who was just basically ensuring that they didn't rip your head off at the first date. And
Yeah.
that's as good as it gets. Some people ask me, is there such a thing as a silver period? And the answer is no, I don't include that. So there's a differentiation between golden and bronze. There's a bit of clear blue water between the two, just in case anybody was wondering about that.
Okay. You had mentioned before when you were talking about the different classifications about how a lot of celebrities and world leaders fall into the upper narcissist, the
Mm.
greater narcissist. So my question is, do they have a certain drive in them that makes them become celebrity or a world leader? Like, what is it that a larger part of celebrities and world leaders are narcissists?
The reason is
Yeah.
that the world of celebrity and the world associated with leadership are very attractive arenas for a narcissist. So
Mm.
we go back to, what is it that a narcissist requires? Control, fuel, character traits, and residual benefits. Therefore, if you are a film star, that gives you the ability to control millions of people because they come and watch your films and they come and shriek your name and they swoon with excitement when they see you. Furthermore, all of those reactions of adoring you and having a crush on you and getting overexcited when you appear provides with you massive amounts of fuel. Furthermore, as that famous entertainer, you are gaining exposure to lots of different people, thus allowing exposure to different character traits that can be acquired. And of course, by being that entertainer, you become famous, which is a residual benefit. You have access to particular networks, which facilitate the other prime aims more readily. You're likely to be wealthy, which is a residual benefit. You can manage a particular facade through your fame. Therefore, entering the fame game as an actor or actress or a pop star, a celebrity, proves hugely attractive for those prime aims. Thus, it attracts lots of narcissists because it allows the narcissist to get the prime aims faster and more intensely. With politics stroke world leadership, it's linked to getting your hands on the reign of power. The celebrities, their power comes from fame. With the leaders, it comes from military governmental power. Again, if you hold the reins of power, you're making the laws, you're sending the troops in, that enables you to assert control over millions of people. Furthermore, people react to you because you're the one that holds the reins of power. Consequently, you have the opportunity through power to provoke lots of reactions, both good and bad, thus receive lots of fuel. Because you're prominent and you're in a position of power, you have the opportunity to interact with lots of people within your government, from other governments, therefore, lots of character traits to be exposed to, and It allows the presentation of a particular facade. It allows access to networks. It can also allow access to money, either whilst in place, embezzling funds of a nation, or thereafter getting out there on the after-dinner circuit and writing your memoirs, etc. So the reason why lots of narcissists exist within those two areas is because they cater to the prime aims really, really well. Then it becomes a self-perpetuating scenario in that in those two arenas, although you do get empaths there as well and normals, they're overrepresented by narcissists, which also means the people who are best equipped to survive and thrive in those environments are, of course, narcissists, because you've got to deal with other narcissists. You can't be a shrinking wallflower. And so consequently, because narcissists populated these things early on, then to come along later and join that arena, you stand a better chance of thriving within it if you're a narcissist, because you won't care, for instance, about treading on somebody's fingers on the ladder or kicking them off it or pulling them off it above you, whereas an empathic person is less likely to want to do that. So it comes down to, one, it is an arena that caters to the prime aims better than others, and two, narcissists are essentially evolved beasts which thrive better in those environments because they're so full of narcissists to begin with. And politics is probably the most prominent example of that.
Yeah, because I've wondered, well, how do they get to that position? Okay, yes, they're narcissists, but not all narcissists are going to become world leaders or celebrities. So maybe what you said is correct.
No,
They have that drive, right, to continue to be persistent and step over people that they need to get where they want.
Well, precisely. I mean, there are many narcissists that just don't have the intelligence or the guile or the connections or the money in the first place to get in there. But that they might try, and then a bigger beast, a bigger narcissist crushes them. That's what can happen. So you will have instances where a narcissist may well try in that arena, but doesn't get anywhere because they're crowded out by the existing beasts, bigger beasts that are already in there. And then there are other narcissists that come along and they are more evolved, and therefore they're a much trickier individual to deal with, and therefore they can engage in the chicanery, etc., and therefore they thrive.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. My next question is about GOSO, which is get out, stay out. Your recommendation when you find out that you're dealing with a narcissist, which I think you term it in the romantic context. But what about if you have a narcissist who's your supervisor or boss? Do you quit? What do you do? How do you handle a narcissist, or even a family member? Like if you're at family events every once in a while, Christmas time or, holidays, and there's that annoying aunt who, you've realized is a narcissist, for example. How do you deal with that person? You can't take them out of your life, or can you?
Well, counsel of perfection is that the starting point should be consideration of removing yourself from having anything to do with that individual and obeying that first golden rule of freedom: get out and stay out. Once you know, you go. So in some instances, your supervisor or your boss at work is a narcissist who's making your life very difficult. Quit, go and get another job. Problem solved. Now, some people say, well, it's not that easy. And in some instances, it's not. But that's how you cure the problem, by removing yourself, because then you can go totally no contact with that individual. If you don't do that, then it might be a case of deciding, right, I'm going to actively look for a new job and I'll hang in there in the meantime, which means that you're not having to subject yourself to years of the behavior, and you have an end sight where you think that I will get out by this point. So it makes it a little bit more, it makes it somewhat more manageable in the interim. If you don't do that and you remain, there's lots of different things that can be done in terms of reducing your involvement with the narcissist on a day-to-day basis and the method of involvement that takes place. Looking at reporting to somebody else, seeing if you can move departments, move offices, etc. And I set out all of this in my package, How to Handle a Narcissist at Work. So I don't want to go into too much detail about that because it's all set out there in a created package which goes through all the steps that you can take where you aren't going to leave your workplace and you have to remain. So there's lots of practical tips in that package about how you can handle that narcissist and stay within the workplace. Similarly, where you have one in the family, the most appropriate thing to do is to have nothing more to do with them. Often you face two difficulties in this regard. The first is that the other members of the family say, why are you not speaking to mum? And you find yourself coming under considerable pressure, and therefore it affects your relationships with those other individuals. Or that other family members understand that that person's difficult, but for instance, you cut out your mother, but then it means you're going to have to lose contact with your father as well, because, for instance, your father recognizes, I know your mum can be a bit of a pain, or maybe doesn't even recognize that, but where they do, but says, I'm too long in the tooth, you know, I'm in my 70s now, it's too late for me to go elsewhere, I'm just going to have to endure it. Now, in some instances, that non-parental narcissist will understand. I know that you're not going to see as much of me because you need to stay away from your mum. We'll try and keep in touch around her so we can meet when she's not around, to have telephone calls when she's not about, so you can try and maintain that contact. But sometimes it also means cutting loose a non-narcissist in the family who's linked up with the relevant narcissist. Again, there are lots of things that you can do with regard to how you regard that person, the level of interaction that you have with them, the times that you have that interaction with them, how you deal with them on those occasions. And that's set out, funny enough, in another of my packages, which is called How to Handle a Parental Narcissist, which is just as applicable to aunties and uncles and grandmas and granddads and brothers and sisters and children, if they're adult children that are narcissists also. And that goes through all the various scenarios and practical tips that are applied to handle those particular narcissists. Both of those packages can be found in my knowledge vault at narcsite.com.
You provide a lot of really valuable insight, and a lot of it is available for free on YouTube, but I do encourage anyone who has more questions to dig into your vault, because I think you do provide really good information.
Yes, thank you. There are hundreds of articles which are free on my blog and thousands of videos which are free. So many of the questions that people have get answered gratis. If you want certain solutions, you'll find them in Knowledge Vault. They're not that expensive in the scheme of things in terms of the peace of mind and the bringing of sanity to your life. They're worthwhile investments. And of course, if you've got particular bespoke questions, then you can arrange to speak to me through the consultation option.
I agree. My last question is an interesting one. I was looking at some studies. I'm always looking at studies relating to the brain, and different, or even just, features of narcissists. But I found one that noted that narcissists usually have very prominent eyebrows, in a way they cultivate the eyebrows to gather attention. So what do you think about that? And I'm curious, was No One Sees You, do you have prominent eyebrows, HG?
No, I would suggest that I have fairly straightforward eyebrows. They're not bushy. They're not non-existent. I have a friend of mine who is a barrister who doesn't really have any eyebrows. And I would always wind people up saying that he returned to a firework when he was a child and it went off in his face. It's a complete lie, but it amuses me to say that. No, mine are just tidy. So I have them, I don't have them sculpted like in a ridiculous way like Omid Scobie does. I just have them medium-sized, I think would probably be the most appropriate. Of the many things that you would think about me, you wouldn't focus on my eyebrows, I think is the answer. They are neither prominent nor underwhelming. They're simply there. They keep the sweat out of my eyes when I'm exercising.
And that's actually the main function of eyebrows, is to keep sweat off your eyes. So
there we are, you see. So mine are fully functional. Of course, as we've seen, there is this trend whereby, particularly amongst women, where it's like, what on earth are those two things? Going from some nicely sculpted eyebrows, such as like that you have, we have these two mating caterpillars that appear and in some instances there's some absolute disasters. I think that with regard to it, the research that was done and the survey that was undertaken, as I understand, and you were very kind to send me a link, that it wasn't the most comprehensive of fields that they looked at. I think there was only 39 subjects, so that doesn't strike me as particularly sweeping research. I think as a matter of common sense, that if you're saying if somebody's got particularly prominent eyebrows, that they're sculpted in a particular way, that they're doing that because they're attracting attention, that certainly lends itself more to somebody being narcissistic, because they're, one, trying to draw a reaction, and two, they're focused on appearance. Though that being a complete indicator of itself that someone's a narcissist would be rather shaky ground, I would suggest. So, for instance, you just say, well, because somebody's got prominent eyebrows, that must mean they're a narcissist, is not a very good way of determining it. But it's interesting. I can understand that it is. But,
yeah. I mean, I didn't think the study was anything dramatic either, but what I did think about, especially when you were talking about the grandiose narcissists who are usually lessers, maybe we need to combine some of HG's criteria in another study on eyebrows and see if the lessers are more likely to have the bushy eyebrows, because, you know, obviously they're not.
Well,
right?
Well, with you mentioned lessers being grandiose. As you know, I don't like terms such as grandiose narcissist, vulnerable narcissist, covert narcissist, because they're too wide. So grandiosity is usually found with your upper lessers, possibly with your middle lesser. You will see some of it with upper mid-range. You're less likely to see it with middle range and lower mid-range. You will see it with graters. So it appears in all three of the main schools, but in different places. And so that's why my lexicon's so effective, because it covers so many different scenarios that are applicable. And so if we were to see which of the sub-schools are the ones with the, and I suppose you determine, when you say prominent eyebrows, I remember there was a British politician called Dennis Healey, and he had very prominent eyebrows. They were unruly, but they were prominent. So are you talking about ones which are just basically look like hedgerows, or somebody that's got them, sort of like Omid Scobie has, where they're very cultivated, but they're rather thick and prominent, and almost look like they've been drawn on. So I suppose there'd be two types that could be applicable. Ones where it's just they've been left to their own devices and they're particularly bushy, and then others where they've been cultivated to make an impression.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. I was going to ask you also, because I know that you're so much better at detecting other narcissists around you. Are you able to detect another narcissist usually immediately, or do you usually have to spend a lot of time with that person before you detect it, or is it different based on the type of narcissist they are?
It isn't the case of sort of knowing from the moment I shake hands with somebody, but in a short space of time thereafter, I will recognize that somebody is a narcissist. Some instances, I will have a suspicion, and therefore I will do certain things to see if I can elicit a particular response which will confirm it. In other instances, by simple observation of the way that the person talks and behaves, it tells me. And there's also, it's not really a sort of spidey sense that I suddenly think, oh yes, this person's a narcissist. What's actually happening is that it's a combination of instinctively picking up on the indicators alongside some conscious awareness of the way this person's behaving, so that because I'm attuned to my kind, I'm able to pick up these indicators in a subconscious way and sort of bring it all together in a short space of time, along with things that I notice overtly as well. So when I'm dealing with somebody, it could be sort of 10 to 15 minutes of interaction with them that then I realize sometimes it could be faster. And I know, for instance, people say, well, you always talk about looking at a range of behaviors. That's in relation to people that I've not physically interacted with. So if you were to come to me, so you would come to me and say, HG, I've been dealing with this person. I need evidence from you over a sustained period of time to analyze that, because I haven't got a feel for them, if you will, because I've not actually met them. And that's why I need a wider range of material in those circumstances. But where I am interacting with that person, then I can make a determination reasonably quickly.
And you were saying that you'll do something to elicit a response to see what, give me an example of that.
Well, a very simple one is to be talking to somebody and then be looking over their shoulder. And an empathic person will often sort of look a little bit uneasy at that, or perhaps they'll just glance around. But it will really get under a narcissist's skin because you're wounding them. And so you're stood right in front of them, but you're not giving them the full attention. So in such circumstances, doing that will likely prompt a more intense reaction, such as, oh, something more interesting than me, is that? And then, okay, there we've got an indicator there, because that response was disproportionate. You didn't need to get so shirty about it. Or saying, never mind what's going on behind, listen to me. So issuing that diktat, again, provides a strong indicator. So there's things such as that, talking to somebody else rather than the narcissist, acknowledging everybody else but not the narcissist. So doling out a bit of wounding is an effective way to see what kind of response there is. Issuing compliments and seeing what the reaction is to see, do they come in and focus. Also, one can do certain things in terms of determining the level of how tactile that they are, because the narcissist invariably believes that, for instance, a male narcissist would believe that all women want to sleep with him, all men want to be his best mate. So often they will be too familiar with you early on. And if you feed them a bit of information about yourself, they will start to trade off that very quickly. So for instance, you might say, oh, you know, I watched the new Tom Cruise film last night, XYZ. Oh, yeah, I saw that too. It's really good, isn't it? And they immediately jump in with enthusiasm. And then you can do a little bit of questioning about, oh, what did you like about it? Oh, you know, the whole thing was really good. Yeah, but was there any particular scene that you really thought was good? Oh, I just thought the whole film was really well put together. And you realize they've not seen it. They're just mirroring you. They're not able to mention specifics. So again, there's little things such as that which provide indicators.
Okay. You mentioned compliments. I mean, everybody likes to get compliments. What's the difference between the reaction of a narcissist versus a non-narcissist when you give a compliment?
Well, first of all, non-narcissists tend to be more humble about it. So they might blush, for instance. They may well go, oh, thank you. But they're a little bit sort of like, oh, goodness me. They're a little bit taken aback by it. Or they'll just say, oh, thank you, it's very kind. And then they'll issue a compliment back. When you do it with a narcissist, if you watch their facial expressions, they will light up as if you've basically just given them a line of cocaine, because you've just given them a dollop of positive fuel, shown that you're under control, which accords with how they believe that you should react to them. There's no embarrassment, they don't go red, and they'll come looking for more. So they may also, in such circumstances, when you pass a compliment, you'll find that there's a lack of boundary recognition, because they'll automatically be tactile with you, touching you on the arm or touching you on the shoulder. Whereas somebody who's met you for the first time wouldn't engage in that behavior. They would instinctively recognize through their emotional empathy the boundary so as not to invade your personal space. Whereas the narcissist diving in there, I want more of the good stuff. This person's giving me positive fuel. I want more. So they start to flirt, in essence. So those are the reactions to the compliment that are different.
And to your point, also, I noticed that sometimes narcissists will over-compliment early on with things.
Yes, yeah, that's what.
Ordinary compliment. That's a little almost.
That is right.
Right.
It's one of the red flags at the outset: excessive complimenting, either issuing a lot of compliments or issuing compliments which don't really fit. So, for example, you might know that you're a bit of, for instance, you recognize you're a bit of a plain Jane. You're not going to win any awards for beauty. You're not ugly, but you're moderately good looking. And this person's going on saying, oh, you like your Greek goddess, etc. And you're thinking, yeah, I'm not all that. This is excessive. doesn't fit with the reality
Yeah,
because it's being seen through the narcissist distortion field, you see.
makes sense, makes sense. Very good, HG. Thank you once again. I really appreciate the time that you took to do this interview with me.
You're more than welcome. Thank you again for inviting me on, Christine.
Thank you so much.